welcome from me. My first meeting as chair of this local pension board. I'm just looking to Helen to keep me on track in terms. I'm conscious this is a board of the Warwickshire County Council, and if I'm missing things that we ought to be doing in terms of process, I hope you'll keep on track. If you don't mind there. Thank you very much. We start with the agenda. Do we have any apologies?
I haven't been made aware of any today. Deb didn't mention any last time I spoke to her, so I think we're okay.
Do we want to note Vicky in attendance? Yeah. Again, I'm not sure how do you note attendances or members of the board as apologies or not, but yeah, that's great. Thank you. Okay. Next substantive item is any declarations of interest. So, do we have any declarations? Hopefully, it's no, because other than general interest in the scheme. But
that was my point, Chair. Clearly, a number of us have an interest because we are members of the scheme, but I guess that's taken as read.
I'm just wondering whether we might want to amend that to be conflicts of interest, because that's what it's supposed to be about, isn't it? Rather than being disclosure of interest. In fact, as a member representative on the board, you have to actually be a member of the scheme to be on the board. So it's a bit of an anomaly. So I should have a look at that one. Next item is in minutes of the previous meeting. I did attempt to observe it, but as I wasn't a member of the meeting at the time, I would ask.
Chair,
yes,
apologies. I don't know whether you can see the hands up function, but Paul Morley has his hand up.
Oh, apologies. I'll pull that one up and have a look at it. Yes. So, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, Martin, I just thought it probably relevant to say now, and I think I have communicated this at some point, but we don't have a new representative here. The new representative is Sean Marsh. I think it's been communicated, but they're still looking at the invite. We still have Marcus Giles on there, so I just think it's important because he's obviously quite a key player in this meeting, the Fabricators Union.
Yes.
Yes, so it's obviously not for now, but it's I'll look perhaps resend the invite, but I just think it's probably something we need to note for this meeting.
Yes, because did she attend the last meeting? Was that her first? Yes, she did, didn't she? She actually attended the last meeting, so I think can we note that in the minutes then, please?
Yeah, I will do.
Yeah, so moving on to the minutes then, I was present at the meeting, but I wasn't a formal member of the meeting, so I look to members of the board to comment on accuracy and any matters arising on the agenda, please. Right.
Chair,
thank you.
Propose the meetings were true and accurate record.
There's a second to that. Thank you. We all happy with that? Thank you. Next, go back to my agenda, which is terms of reference. Do you want to introduce this one, Liz, in Vicky's absence?
I think it's Neil on this one, Martin.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
And thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, everybody. I'll start this off with an apology. As Liz very astutely pointed out this morning, the terms of reference have been updated since when they were originally passed in 2015, when the board was set up. I've got sections there where they have been changed or introduced, and unfortunately, section 7.4 is missing from the terms of reference. So I will correct these and recirculate them to all the board members and make sure that they are correct before they go to staff and pensions and on to full council for approval.
Thank you.
Okay, that's all really I wanted to say. I'm quite happy there's within the appendix is the full terms of reference, obviously minus 7.4, and conflicts of interest as well. And as I've pointed out already, these will go to staff and pensions for sight and then go on to full council for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody got any points or comments on the terms of reference? They seem to be relatively straightforward to me. our best practice. So we're happy to accept those in the terms of the process you've outlined. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, move on now to the main substantive item around the pensions update, and there's been a number of developments since the board last met. I'm certainly aware of, and certainly colleagues will be aware of those. Is that for you, Liz, or?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Thank you. So this is we're starting to expand the information that we're bringing to the board, which we've talked about at the previous meeting, really to try and give a broader picture of the activity that's going on to administer the fire pension schemes, and it also brings our reporting more into line with the sorts of issues and topics that we present to the local government pension scheme, local pension board as well. So we're improving our consistency around that. So some of these items will be appearing in this report for the first time, just for your information. Breaches is the first item. We've had one recorded breach to date, which was minor and not reportable under the Pensions Regulator Code of Practice, but it has been resolved, and we've reviewed practices to try and prevent a recurrence of that. Internal dispute resolution procedures. We've had 3 cases since October which have been investigated in line with our IDRP process. 2 of those cases have not been upheld. 1 has been upheld and is now being dealt with by HR. McLeod Sargent. So the government has now confirmed, following the consultation, that they are going for the deferred choice underpin option. So scheme members won't have to choose which scheme their benefits are based on until the time that their benefits are due to be paid. And I think that's a good outcome. That was certainly part of the response that Warwickshire gave to the consultation process, because it ensures that members are making decisions based on proper information rather than trying to second guess what might happen between their current position and the point at which they draw their pension. So I think that's a positive outcome. And in terms of how we're now managing McLeod, we've set up a project to take us through all of the various stages of implementing the remedy. That will include a big focus on communications to make sure that scheme members get all of the information that they need. And we're using a company called Aon as our technical project managers on that, partly because they'll bring the project management capacity, but also they have all of the specialist technical expertise to bring to the party to make sure that we're getting it right in the way that we implement the remedy. And then on to immediate detriment. So there is some news relatively hot off the press on this one. The Home Office had provided guidance on how we deal with immediate detriment cases, and some of that was being contested, but I understand that has not been successful. This has just been announced in the last day or so. We are waiting to hear whether fire and rescue authorities are likely to appeal that, but it's sounding as though that's probably unlikely. So we are still applying the Home Office guidance with caution on a case-by-case basis, and we will need to make sure that we're clear with members that where we follow the guidance, we'll need to revisit calculations of benefits once the regulations have changed, just to make sure again that we've got everything completely correct.
Yeah, just to support what Liz is saying there. Yeah, I suppose it was the Fire Authority's defence was around Schedule 22, I think it is. It was the Appellate Appeals Tribunal overturned that and actually said that the local authorities can't rely on that. So actually should have been in a position from the outset that they knew that the terms of the regulation were unlawful and shouldn't have implemented them from the start. It's quite an interesting concept that it says here's a set of government regulations that you should have known were unlawful before anybody actually challenged they were unlawful. But leaving that aside, that's the case, and it's actually, I think the view is it's unlikely that even if an appeal was made, it would be overturned. So I think that's a position. But I understand, if I get it rightly, what you've actually already decided they were going to implement anyway. So that decision hasn't made hasn't had a direct impact on your plans. If I'm right, is that correct? Yeah.
That's correct.
So that's helpful to know. The other question I've got in this is that the immediate detriment guidance was quite specific about ill health retirements and the like. I'm presuming I'm not presuming, that's the wrong thing to do. I'm asking the question. I think I know the answer. You're actually widening that across to all retirement from a point now, or whenever you made the decision, will be in legacy schemes from the outset. Is that correct?
Can I take that question away and come back?
Yeah, I accept you.
I'm not close enough to it, and had Vicky been here, I'm sure she'd have been able to answer that one. But Paul may have more to add. So, do you have more to add on, Paul?
Sorry, can I just clarify the question? I think I might be able to answer that, and perhaps with the support of Ian Morris, who I see is on the line. But sorry, the question about the immediate detriment cases, and it's about ill health retirement. Could you just repeat the question, Martin?
Yeah, so it was that the immediate detriment guidance was largely about immediate ill health retirements. Now we have the sort of ruling around powers to do immediate detriment. What it actually means, in my view, is that actually all future retirements should be on the basis of legacy schemes. And my question was, is that what you already decided to do at Warwickshire? With the other hat on, we didn't, and it's a change, but I don't think it's a change for you, is it? It's just a confirmation of what you'd already decided.
I do understand. So the answer is, yeah, that's correct. Ian, jump in if I'm saying this incorrectly, but since, I think from about 4 or 5 months now, we've been paying the immediate detriments, whether between now, those that are due to retire now, between now and 31st of March 2022. And we were doing that for both ill health and those who were able to retire. And I think we've got a couple of examples that we could, that suggest we have actually done that. So yeah, none of that kind of applies to us anyway, because we were already doing it.
Yeah, that's what.
Sorry to jump in, Ian. With the possible exception of one impending retirement, where I don't think we will do it on the immediate detriment guidance.
Okay. So I mean, there obviously could be confidential.
That's due to tax rules and things like that haven't been decided yet.
So. Okay. All right. Fair enough. Yeah. Thanks, Ian.
But the intention and where it can be is that they're done. So in a sense, that ruling hasn't actually made a huge difference in practical terms. Is that correct?
Yeah. Not from the administration point of view, no.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, I interrupted there. Please carry on.
So on to section 8 and data scores. So this is the process for checking the completeness and accuracy of the data that we hold for members. You'll see from section 8.2 that our common data scores are pretty good and compare well with others. On specific data, our scores are lower for the 1992 and 2015 schemes. For 1992, the reason for that is largely because they're legacy schemes, and when we've put data into the system, it's making sure that we've got the basic data in there that we need to be able to pay people who have membership in those schemes. I'm not sure that there's much point in adding in a whole load of additional data that isn't needed to be able to pay those people accurately. So the intention is that we focus our efforts on improving the data scores for the 2015 scheme data. And there's a lot of work going on to address that at the moment. The intention is to try and bring that score up to at least 90%. One of the things that should help in that, we've taken a decision, we've spoken previously, I think, about the implementation of the iConnect system. Certainly we've talked about it in relation to the LGPS, and this is a way of automating the submission of data from employers into the pension system to make sure that we've got the right data, and where we've got any discrepancies between data that sits in the employer's payroll system and the pension system, those discrepancies are automatically highlighted and put back to the employer to resolve. We are now intending to put firefighter information onto that system, onto iConnect as well. So that means that we'll be automating the transmission of member data from the payroll system into the pension system, and that will help to pull out any data errors, and again will help to improve that data score.
Brian, we have a question.
Thank you, Chair. I may have missed the point, Liz, but bear with me on this. Some members will be reverting back into the 92 scheme or into their legacy scheme because of the ruling. One of the issues I mentioned before we started, the FPS bulletin 42. One of the things that it says is that we will need. Bear with me one moment while I find the right term. Administrators will need additional data from fire and rescue authorities to rebuild the final salary record. And it talks about the final salary record going back to the 1st of April 2015. At the moment, I know from personal experience that our Your HR system, because it came live in circa 2018, it doesn't have the accurate data prior to that. So I just wanted to flag that some of those members reverting into the legacy scheme, that information may not be accurate. So
I think I can check this with Vicky, although Neil and Ian may already know the answer to this, but I think that there is advice due to come out, might be from the LGA, about how we deal with those cases where we don't hold that historic data, and how to, I think there's going to be guidance coming out on the assumptions that we should be using for sort of calculating that.
So if I may, Chair, for some of us, so for example, I could give you my employment history back to the 1st of April 2015, but if you looked at the current system, it will tell you I was employed in 1992 as an area manager, which would have been lovely, but for salary purposes, but obviously wasn't the case. So there are some of us where, understandably, when the new system was introduced, it went from day one for the new system. So it's just, but some of the records are available. And if I may, some of us still have access to the old Wintergrate systems. Those of us that are involved with the Atherstone investigation actually still have Wintergrate systems on record. So it may be that we have information that HR doesn't hold because it's held in a legal archive. So I don't know whether I'm even meant to offer that up, but I am offering it up. So.
Okay, that's useful to know. Thank you, and I'll make sure that. Well, so Ian.
Ian's got a question.
Yeah, so from a data collection point of view, we would still be able to access the previous payroll system, so we shouldn't have any problems with that. The issue that we have sometimes with the current firefighters is identifying temporary promotions and actual promotions. So that's where the problem comes with what the data reported by the council to us is. So I wouldn't think we'd have any problem finding retrospective pay details going back to 2015.
Just a question for me, Liz, and you might need to go back to Vicky on this one. In terms of the 92 scheme, there are aspects of the 92 scheme which I'm aware of that were recorded as missing data, but actually make no difference. So you've got people who've historically been on pension, you haven't got the actual date that the employee left, or you haven't got the address of this dependent at that time. So all stuff that doesn't actually have an impact on the accuracy of the payment for the member. But in terms of the 15 scheme, 50% does seem quite low. Are there categories of data that are missing in that, or what is it that's missing or incorrect that's living such a low score?
Again, I don't have that information, but okay. I can go back and check with Vicky what it is, where the key areas are.
And again, I was wondering, is it because you've obviously changed the payroll system at some point? It's not one of these ones where you're waiting for data from payroll and it'll go in and suddenly the score will go up to 90%. It's not what. Just purely interested to know what it is. Clearly, you've got plans to improve it, which is good. So.
Yeah, and unless Neil or Ian are able to answer that one, I'll come back after the meeting if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. Okay. To move on, Liz.
Yeah, can I just make a point listening to the debate? It really sounds as though a number of people are holding data sets on their computers, coming from a range of data sources. It might be worth just double checking the legal requirements around the retention of that data under the Office of Data Commissioner's regulations, because you shouldn't be using data for another purpose if you've been given it for example, for the death. You shouldn't be reusing it in the pension environment.
Sorry, Army.
Yeah, it's absolutely fair point, Councillor. I mean, what we have is an archived version of the old Wintergrate system, so I could absolutely take legal advice on whether it was applicable to use that or not. It was simply the system was frozen or archived, whatever term you want to use. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just making sure compliance, isn't it, in case anything goes wrong.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. I think we can make a declaration, can't we, to if we retain that data, the reason why we're retaining it. For circumstances like this, I think that's the case. That we can just.
Yeah, I think as long as you've got a valid reason for holding it, and that might be the question: is do you actually need to hold that in order to create that record? As long as you've got a valid reason for holding it and you state that and you comply with that, then yes. Yeah. But I think the question is a valid reason for holding something when somebody's already in payment? Yeah. I don't know the answer to that. I'll leave that one for you, Neil and Ian to.
If I can deal with the primary point there, Chair, I'm quite convinced our primary reason for holding the data is valid. I've got no concerns or qualms about that. That's been legal to death, if you'll pardon the expression. But it would be whether it was applicable to share that information or use it for a different purpose. But yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it's just to make sure that nobody falls foul of anything. I mean, if you're happy, then that's fine by me. Don't wish to create any more work than needs to be done.
Okay, so the final update in this report is around the outsourcing of fire pensions administration. We've reported to the board previously that it was our intention to go down this route, and we discussed last time the fact that we would want to make sure that our data quality is up to scratch before we do outsource the service, because we don't want to be handing over data that is kind of substandard. So while that work on data scores and data quality is ongoing, we have been working on finalising the invitation to tender documentation. That is probably 95% of the way there now. I think that the most significant area that we still need to complete is what quality evaluation questions we would want to use in that process. And we did have a working group in operation looking at that documentation and agreeing the approach, and we're probably getting back to the time where we reinstate that group so that we can pick that work up again. The other thing to mention is that Shropshire have expressed an interest in potentially joining us in that tender exercise. We are keen to look at going live with any outsourcing from April 2022 because it fits in quite nicely with where we think we'll be with the board. Our suggestion is that we share the tender documentation once it's complete with Shropshire and see if that would also meet their purposes. And if they want to join in on that tender exercise and there are just some minor tweaks, then we can certainly look at that. And that's something that we'd take back through the working group. If Shropshire were wanting some more wholesale changes to what we were proposing, then I think we might be more in the position of sharing the documentation for them to go through their own process. But I think what we might be reluctant to do is end up delaying our own tender process further, while we look at trying to agree a common set of tender documentation. And very grateful for the board's views on that.
I've got Paul comment.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, it's just on that, Liz. If I could ask a couple of questions on that. I mean, I know, and I absolutely get the sense in getting the data right before we progress, of course. But I know we were initially going to try and have this up and running done by around this summertime. So obviously that's probably likely to have been put back. And I'm just very conscious of a couple of things really. They're kind of pushing against each other. One, we're trying to protect Ian Morris a little bit from being inundated with queries and a deluge of queries. but at the same time, we have a number of members of staff who are likely to want to have some information and ask questions that they're probably entitled to as well. And that's probably going to get bigger and bigger as the months and the next couple of years go by. So certainly the point about, you know, there are a lot of benefits of going hand in hand with Shropshire to do this, but I wouldn't personally want the tender process to go too long for the reasons that I've just mentioned. So so I guess another question really is any rough idea when, whether we did or we didn't go with Shropshire, when it will likely to be in place?
So I completely agree, Paul. We don't want to delay this unnecessarily. I think just in terms of the time that it will take to let the contract and go through the procurement process, we're probably looking at a 1st of April 22 go live date. I think we do have some mitigation around support for the fire pension schemes that now, because we have Vicky in the pensions advert, which having come from an environment where she was working largely just on fire pensions, so we've got a resilience in this area that I think, you know, 6 months ago or 9 months ago we probably didn't have. And also I know that there's another member of staff in Ian's team who is being trained up in this area as well. So I think where historically we've had all of the knowledge and expertise invested, you know, largely in one person, we are not in that position anymore, and I think that will mean that we've got sufficient coverage in the time that it takes to go live with the outsourcing exercise. Does that answer your question?
Barnaby?
Thank you, Chair. Just to make the point again, it's on the Shropshire one. There's a national fire procurement framework. So if the timing didn't fit and we went ahead and procured on our own, assuming we did it in line with the regs, and I'm sure we would because we always do, then it'd be fairly easy for Shropshire then to piggyback on our agreement if they wanted to follow us into the same thing, if that makes sense. So the framework could actually adopt our tendering process and other brigades could benefit from it. It might be that even the timing doesn't work, Shropshire could still follow us in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we'll certainly be. So the working group, when we reinstate it, obviously includes colleagues from procurement, and we can look at how that will work and do what we can to make that available to other services.
Just two questions from me then, if I may. In terms of joint procurement, are you looking at a joint procurement process or a joint contract if you do something with Shropshire?
Still determined, I think, Martin. I think the first thing is are they happy with the tender documentation? I think then the mechanics of the procurement process and whether it's a single contract or separate contracts under a joint tender will be part of the negotiations with them.
The reason I ask is, with another hat on, I am aware that they're also looking for support in the same way that I have a pensions officer working for me and not for West Yorkshire in my sort of, day job. They're looking for arrangements around that. So I didn't know whether they were looking at something broader than just the contract, but and that was just purely out of interest. So my second question is just from experience, and that moving pension stuff over at the beginning of the financial year may or may not, but there's pros and cons about doing it at that point when you've still got somebody to do all your benefit statements, etc., when they're taking over from a new supplier. So your deadlines will be based on your requirement, but I'd say just be cautious around that. My experience was actually going mid-year was actually much easier, but except you've got those questions to resolve.
Thank you. Sorry, can I just check, when you said that they may also be looking for a pensions officer, did you mean in terms of the client side and contract management side? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. We're already in discussion, very early discussions with them about whether we could support them with our post, and that's why I was interested in what the contractual arrangements would be. As with all of us, we've got a few other things on the plate over the next few months to deal with, so I'm not sure we have any capacity.
I'll check out whether that's a conversation Vicky's had with them.
Okay. So the other question, just on the update, and it just perhaps for next time, is an update on preparation for O'Brien Matthews. Might be worth understanding.
We can certainly include that in the next report. Yeah.
And sorry, does everybody know what O'Brien Matthews is?
No.
The 2006 modified scheme for the part-time working settlement only went back to 2000. There's been a case, I think O'Brien was a judge, I think, who has successfully argued that limiting it back to 2000 was unlawful and it should go back to the start of service. So there's the potential for a 2006 modified round 2, allowing individuals to backdate their pension service to their start dates. So that's a fun one. And I don't know what Warwickshire is like, but I know at Hereford and Worcester we've got at least 2 individuals who've got service going back to 1968 who are still employed. So that's a fun time.
I'll certainly pick that one up for the next report.
Thank you. Yeah, that's fine. It's soon, but not imminent. Thank you, Liz. No more questions on that. Next item is the this monitoring. Again, I'm not sure what normal practice would be. Do you, at least that one, looking at yourself, Liz and Vicky, do you review it first and we're looking at the proposals, or are we going through it as the board to agree any changes?
I'm looking at Neil. Are you?
Oh right, sorry, we're on risk.
Sorry.
Yes, sorry. I think I had a little blip there. Right, this is introducing the risk register to the board. So this is the first draft of it. What the intention is each quarter we will bring you any amendments basically to the register that's shown at Appendix 1. So, for example, straight away, whilst listening to the conversations going on about data collection, that, for example, could be added in about the 92 scheme as a potential risk, and also, let's say, for O'Brien and Matthews as well. So, here it is for you to have a look at and comment on, what have you. But each quarter, we will bring that back to you with any amendments on and that type of thing. So basically, how it works is we identify a gross risk, and then we net that off with any mitigation that we've done. Within this one, also, we've introduced risks that were identifiable through COVID. And so you'll see, for example, how it works is for administration disruption in the COVID risk, we showed that as a high risk level. But the mitigation, and we all know by experience now as to how it's worked, how it's gone, that's been offset as a net risk. So that's how it will work, and that's what we will bring back to you each quarter.
And just for my benefit in terms of process, is the board agreeing the risks and risk registers, or is it an information item for the board? It's
an information item, but I'm more than happy to take any suggestions or comments, or even now or in the future, to be honest.
I was just trying to understand whether we need to go through it and say, yeah, we agree that, or you're giving us to us for information. I mean, it's comprehensive, and I think it's helpful to look at that. So,
okay.
Does anybody have any questions or comments around that? I've got Barnaby first.
Thanks, Chair. I guess I need to understand exactly what we're looking at. So on the first one, inadequate data quality, I'm fairly confident that people end up with the right pensions eventually, and that's no criticism of anybody that's sat in on this meeting at the moment. But what we do know at the moment is we have a number of issues with data coming from payroll to the pensions function. and I'm fully aware that Alison Oakes is doing a great job. She's rooting around, she's sorting all this out, so I know it's being dealt with. But if we were talking about data from payroll to the pensions function, I would say the net risk of 6 is optimistic at the moment.
Right. Okay.
But quite confident it's going to get to that point, if not lower, because I know Alison's now all over it. But that would be my observation, if I'm understanding what that one is trying to represent.
Yeah. Well, we could again. That's a fair point, and we can review that with Vicky and adjust that accordingly and bring that back next time. Okay.
It doesn't make me right. This is a board. It's just an observation from what I'm seeing.
No, that's fine. And you know that is helpful, to be honest, Barnaby. It's really helpful.
Just to give some assurance to the board, I don't know again how many people actually know, but Warwickshire County Council actually provide our Hereford and Worcester's payroll services, and we actually don't have any problems getting the data across. So I don't think those issues are insurmountable. I think they, so take a view on that. But I think that I don't think there should be a long-term problem. I think I don't know what the detail is, but I don't think there's a fundamental problem there.
We can already see it improving, Chair, to be fair. So we need to be clear on that. Good work's being done and it is improving. So.
Okay, thank you.
Liz, sorry, I've got a hand up.
Yeah, just to say again, I think the implementation of iConnect will also help to improve the quality of data that's coming across from the payroll system, because it automatically throws up any errors and discrepancies and highlights those that need resolving, in addition to all the work that Alison's doing.
Okay, thank you. No more points on that. We'll move on to next item, which was next steps on. Wait a second, I'll scan down the documents. Oh, forward plan, that was it.
Forward plan. Again, this is me. Basically, this is the forward plan for the board, and you'll see in appendices 1 and 2 the type of items that we plan to bring to the board in future. This isn't set in stone, so there will be some flexibility, and if there are items that we can bring forward, or alternatively, if there are items that we perhaps hit a snag with and have to put back, they will be shown on the forward plan. I'll note straight away in the executive summary, the date of the next pension board meeting has been moved now to the 9th of June. Am I correct? Yeah. So that will be amended, obviously, for the next one. So basically, we're showing you here what the standard items are, standing items that will come to the board each quarter, and you'll see that, for example, going back to the risk register, in quarter 1 we will be monitoring the risk register, in quarter 2, quarter 3, etc. Then there will be bespoke items. So next lot, then policies, which policies we intend to bring to the board, time permitting, I'll quickly say. And on appendix 2, going back to appendix 1, the training. I will be talking to Vicky about getting a more detailed training plan for members, that they will be invited to sessions that they can take part in, etc. And then in appendix 2, what we've listed there is the policies, what committee they go to for approval, which most of the times is staff and pensions for fire, when they're reviewed, and when we plan to, the board will have sight of those before they go to staff and pensions for approval. So those policies, referring back to the last board meeting, for those policies that we haven't yet got in place, we refer back to the ones that we've got in place for the local government pension scheme. So, for example, the cyber policy is planned to come to the board next meeting. Well, we will use the cyber policy that's in place for the local government scheme until that point in time.
Liz, and then I've got a question for Neil on that one.
Just in relation to training, Chair, probably you would have raised this anyway, but I understand Hereford and Worcester are holding a pensions board training session with the LGA on the 24th of March anyway, which has been opened up to board members, which Claire Alcott from the LGA is going to be presenting.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks, Liz. Thank you.
If I could just come in before we set up Paul there, just on the cyber security one was just of interest for me, because I was presuming that would be a county council wide cyber security policy rather than the pension. So just interested how that sort of sits in.
Yeah, yes and no. The pension regulator is keen for example, the pension fund, the local government pension fund, to have a bespoke cyber policy in place and how we monitor this. So, and not only for the fund itself, but also for our partners. So, for example, our actuaries and other bodies that we're in contact with, Haywoods, who produce Altair, that type of thing. So the regulator is keen that each pension scheme has a cyber policy, and that's why. But you're right, the bulk of it is maintained by the county council. And it is very secure. It's in what they call a ward garden. All the systems are, so they're very well protected. Vicky and I had a meeting with, his name escapes me now, some chap the other week who was telling us that they are hit by millions of potential malwares every day that are rebuffed by their system. So, yeah.
Thank you, sir. So, Paul, you have a hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Jed. There's just a couple of things back to the forward plan items. Just a couple of things. Is it worth throwing or very briefly, is it worth throwing the tender process on there?
Yeah.
The main scheme, going back to the training plan for board members, I think we've already had discussions, and this is kind of already in the pipeline, but training for scheme members, specifically in relation to the changes in annual tax allowance and lifetime tax allowance, because I know Ian again is being inundated with queries at the moment, and people don't understand it fully. So I think if we can get people to understand it, then that will reduce a bit of traffic into the pensions department.
Okay. Yeah.
I was just wondering whether that's training, whether it's communication. I mean, the point I accept, yes, it'd be helpful if you do. Is it communicating or training people, and there's just this moot point about what it is on that.
Yeah. Okay. I know Vicky's been talking about training, so 4 scheme members on this in this area. So, but I'll take that back to her so we can communicate something with you about what the plans are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh yes, so it was mentioned around including the update on the tender process, for want of a better word. That would be helpful.
That's fine.
What is the again? I've been through it once before with a sort of slightly different position. What is the role of the board in that? Obviously, the board doesn't get involved in the tender process at all, but does it have a comment on what that process might be? Or obviously, there's a framework now, so there's no question about how you're selecting those who you attend, and not who they are, but how you're selecting them. What's the process? Is there a role there, or is that not?
I shall refer to Liz.
I was going to say, I'm looking at Liz on that one.
If I may.
You can't tell I'm looking at Liz from here, can you?
So we did some soft market testing last year, and the 2 potential tenderers that expressed an interest at that point in time were West Yorkshire and West Midlands. So there's a question about whether or not we use a framework, and I'm trying to recall, but I think we had that debate at the time. And I think in order to invite both of those parties to tender, Paul, I think you were on that working group as well, and I've got a feeling that it was agreed that we would go out to open tender because there were 2 slightly different frameworks, and not both parties weren't on the same framework. So I think as a result, we wanted both of them to have an opportunity to tender, and therefore our intention was to just go out to open tender rather than doing it through a framework.
That's correct, Liz. Yeah, we did agree that.
And if if that debate's already happened, that's fine. I don't want to we go through areas already covered, obviously. Oh, sorry, I've got to find me.
I think you may have got the red chair, but just going back to the terms of reference, the role of the pension board is to assist the scheme manager to secure the effective and efficient governance and administration of the firefighters pension scheme. If we are tendering out for the governance and certainly the administration of it, then I think there's a role for the board there, whether that's to put representatives on the tendering process or to be invited to comment, I don't know, but I think there's a role for the board somewhere in that loop. So.
I think we would want to assure the board as to what we're doing. So we'd need the board's assurance that they're happy and content with that.
I don't think we actually want to get involved in evaluating any tenders or anything like that. I don't know if we have to do it at the day job.
I'm just too much of a nerd. I can't help it. No, I agree with Neil.
Okay.
So Liz, you had your hand up briefly. Was that a legacy hand or?
No, sorry, that was just. I was just going to say what Neil had said, that yes, we'd look for the assurance from this board, and then the ultimate decision making sits with the Staff and Pensions Committee.
Yeah. Thank you. I think I was just going back. That was the last substantive item on the agenda, I think.
Yep.
Let's go back to the top of the page. There we go. So do we have any other business? Oh, David.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to note that this is my second, but also my last meeting. I have chosen not to stand for re-election to Warwickshire County Council. So thank you very much indeed, everybody, and good luck going forward.
Thank you, David. Good luck.
Just a question for me on that one, so before bring Barnaby on, is what's the process for seeking replacement members? Do we have a succession plan, or
if I can help, Chair,
Yep.
Sorry, it's Jane Pollard. That would be a decision for Council in May following the elections.
That's fine. What I didn't want to do is if there's something we needed to do that we don't do, so that's absolutely fine. Happy with that.
Thank you.
Okay, Barnaby.
Thanks, Chair. I should start by thanking Councillor Riley for his assistance on this and other matters. It'd be rude not to do that. Any other business? I mentioned earlier the Firefighter Pension Scheme Bulletin 42, which has come out very recently. There are a number of questions which the bulletin suggests fire and rescue authorities now need to address, and I'm not. You'll be delighted. I'm not planning on going through those questions one by one, but so on page 6 of that bulletin, starting on page 6, there are 5 questions set out that this bulletin says fire authorities now need to address. I would like to know the answer to those questions.
Are you able to
next board?
Are you able to just share that document so we can?
Yeah, I can share the relevant.
Page.
Vicky did actually send it round, but I'd anticipated Vicky being here, but obviously she's not. So, tell me when you can see it.
Yes.
So, you'll see there, fire and rescue authorities now need to determine, etc. And then, I won't scroll yet, but there are 5 questions there,
yes,
which sets out.
Yeah.
Rather than waiting until the next meeting, can I suggest that we look at those and put a note round to the board with the answers as to how we're addressing those?
Yeah.
Yeah, if we could do that, and then just put them as an item on the next meeting, so we formally note that we've reported we had answers to them. Would be helpful.
Yeah. And as I've shared, basically, you'll see it at the bottom there. That's the bit I was talking about before about the rebuilding the final salary record. That's where that reference comes in as well. That's not one of the questions. That was the point I made earlier.
Thank you.
So I unshare. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other business? Okay. Well, thank you